guys, welcome back to Well and Worthy Life. I'm so excited to have a wonderful guest with me today, Dr. Jessie Hehmeyer. Dr. Jessie is the physician founder of Well Empowered, where she practices data-driven, outcome-oriented functional medicine. I love this because when she created Well Empowered, and I love that name, Well Empowered, like Well and Worthy Life, right? With one commitment in mind, providing you the foundation of health and vitality that transforms your experience of life and alters what is possible for you. She does this by getting to the root cause, something different, right? And people that have been on here or listening for a while, I have had some functional medicine doctors on here, Dr. H, and I'm so excited to have you here today with me.
It is such a pleasure to be with you, Deanna, and your tribe. Thank you for the opportunity to collaborate and partner in sharing the goodness of vitality and health.
Yes, exactly. And I love what you're doing. I mean, we talked before the recording and a month or so ago before I went to Europe and before you came back. And let's just tell everybody, well, first of all, I want to tell everybody where you're living at this moment. So tell everybody about that. And then we're going to go backtrack and tell everybody about how you got interested in functional medicine, because I think that's something really important.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first of all, I live in Lucerne, Switzerland. So I call it working remotely.
Yeah.
And my husband and I, we moved to Switzerland about a year and a half ago for his work. And I am grateful and fortunate enough that I can bring my work with me wherever I go. So I now work from Switzerland.
And my business is all virtual too. So that is the beauty of what we do, because we can meet with clients from anywhere. But I love this because I was just telling you, I just went to Switzerland because one of the days I had free, me and my girlfriends did an e-bike tour through Switzerland. And it was so beautiful, so clean. I'm like, of course you'd want to live in Switzerland. I've got to go back and visit Switzerland more. Like,
truly. And, to the point where it is kind of like a pinch me beautiful location, right? It is, I call it supermodel gorgeous. It is so gorgeous. And it, as you were saying, right, it runs so well. As I shared before we hopped on today, one of my friends who lives in Switzerland, but isn't from Switzerland, texted me last week before I came back. And she said, "Are you back in Disneyland yet?" Like it really has this like, whoa, kind of feeling about it.
It's just so beautiful and like so clean and just, I mean, what a great place to live a well-empowered life, to be honest, a well and worthy life, a well-empowered life. I mean, what a way to practice living that, I mean, really.
Yeah, the environment definitely calls for health and vitality.
Yes.
Right. It's culturally speaking, it's very centered around being out and using your body and enjoying your life. Right. They really honor the wonder of this land, and also they honor what it is to live fully. Right. We're multifaceted people, and being out there in the world exploring and is a big part of the culture. So it definitely, it is a wonderful thing. And I'm very grateful for the experience.
Oh, I know. So if you guys are listening, you need to go visit Switzerland for sure. For sure. That's got to be on your bucket list. Okay. But let's backtrack a little bit. And so how did you end up here in functional medicine? What helped you create Well Empowered?
Yeah, well, Deanna, I like to say straight lines are boring.
Yeah.
So we'll just start with that as the premise. But ultimately, how I made my way to becoming a functional medicine practitioner was I really have always been deeply devoted to health and vitality. I grew up and health was a focus in our household through being active and through my mom feeding us wonderful, beautiful food. And
wait, where'd you grow up too?
I grew up in the north suburbs of Chicago.
Okay.
And a suburb called Northbrook. And then I moved, when I went to college, I went to UCLA. And at UCLA, I created my schedule so that it worked for my workout, like when I wanted to work out and where I
Love
wanted
that.
to.
I love it.
So you could see where my mind was. And that involved a lot of running and rollerblading and biking and being out there in the beauty of the California sunshine. I did not take it for granted one day, really, really,
Oh,
really, really.
so
And
perfect.
I stayed in California for about 2 years after graduating and worked as a physical therapy aide. And over the course of that was really looking at how do I want to be a part of people's health journey. So I started considering graduate degrees at that point, but ultimately chose to move back to Chicago, downtown Chicago, and opened up the first high intensity strength training, boutique strength training facility in the city at the time in 2002.
Wow.
And was the managing partner there for about 4 years, at which point I really got, I wanted to be able to contribute to people on a deeper and more meaningful level. And part of that was related to my journey, right?
Mhm.
For me, I had, been on the weight loss roller coaster, despite my commitment to health and despite how active I was, right? For over 10 years at that point. And I really got that it was interfering with my ability to be present and fully contribute in this world. Like being constantly focused on my weight and what I was eating or what I wasn't eating. And at one point, there were a number of aha moments, but there's one in particular I remember. And I'll just say a little bit about this moment because I think people can relate to this, right? I was standing in my kitchen in Lincoln Park in Chicago, and I was holding in one hand a glass that kind of had like a little sludge at the bottom of it.
Mhm.
And in my other hand, I had my car keys. And there was this noise. It was kind of like a kind of noise. And that was my stomach, right? And it was given by this sludge filled glass was the remnants of a master cleanse, right? It was like I know, right? Please.
Oh.
Yes, eye roll of recognition, right? It's like, okay, what was it? It was like cayenne pepper and a little lemon juice and maybe some maple syrup, I think. I don't even know. It was all kinds of shenanigans, right? And so I was starving because I was doing this ridiculous master cleanse for a few days.
Mhm.
And it really, and the keys, by the way, they were in my hand because naturally when you're starving, you go to McDonald's and get a McFlurry, right? And so that was like the solution, right? And I really got in that moment this ridiculous paradigm we were born into of deprivation or overindulgence, of all or nothing. And being able to see that, and also being able to see what it was costing me to live in this inherited paradigm made me just go like, no. This is not how my life's going to go, right? And so that was one of multiple moments where I drew a line in the sand and really committed to a journey that I now call mastering your middle ground, right? And that mastering your middle ground is really born of equal parts heart and science. And it's one of the primary things I do in my data-driven functional medicine work is guiding people in the realm of weight loss. I certainly work in other areas as well, but guiding people who have struggled for years or decades in this area. But one of the things I got was that, okay, it was great for me to figure out my path, but if I really wanted to be able to contribute to others, I needed to learn about the body because different bodies work differently. Different bodies have different obstacles. Different bodies have different needs, right? So that led me to go to graduate school and get tooled up with the science that I needed to be able to become a functional medicine physician and do what I do.
So I love that all or nothing mentality. I was stuck there for so long too. And that diet roller coaster. I mean, always trying to find the next best diet to lose that weight quick. And, I never had that much weight I had to lose. It was always that little bit, like 5 pounds, maybe. I think the most I ever gained other than having children was 10 pounds, so, but I started that roller coaster about the age of 15, I think 14 or 15. My mother put me on my first diet, and so it took me years too to figure out, like, this is not working. I was a lot older than you by the time I figured that out. I only figured that out at, like, maybe when I hit 50. I was like, this is really not going to work at this age.
Yeah.
I think that all or nothing mentality, so many people get caught up in that. And it does it it's just like you said, it just gets you stuck, and then you're either on a diet or you're just like, whatever, you know?
Right. Right. Absolutely. You're on a diet or you're off a diet. Right.
Mhm,
And the thing is none of us made this up. Right.
mhm,
You know, it's been going on for generations.
mhm.
And so I think it's helpful to kind of see, right? You said your mom put you on your first diet at 15. And if you look back at when you were 15, Deanna, do you think that 15-year-old you needed to be on a diet?
No,
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 yeah,
absolutely
right,
not. Yeah,
right,
no.
right.
Yeah.
So it's, you know, I think a lot about how this all evolved for us, but the punchline is we didn't make it up because we never would have. It's broken.
Right.
It doesn't work. If we were just given a real, true, clean slate, we would have come up with something much better. But it's great, right? It gives us an opportunity to invent a whole new perspective and
Mhm.
have that be what we pass along,
Mhm.
right?
Right, right. Well, that's why I think for me right now, that is a huge passion for me. I want to make sure that my granddaughter, who is almost 4 years old, never even thinks I need to go on a diet. Like,
Yes.
that never comes to her
Yes.
mind. All she thinks is, I want to nourish my body so that I feel good. And it's just, I want to move my body, not because I have to quote exercise, but because I feel good and I like to be active and I like to be outside. And she doesn't have to go through what I feel like that I battled all those years. Like, looking in the mirror and seeing something different, I
Yeah.
mean, I still, even with all the things, and I'm at a very healthy weight now, I still look sometimes, I'm like, oh, you need to, hear my mom's voice. You need to lose a couple of
Mm,
pounds there.
uh,
It's work that you have to do. It just
yes.
doesn't, but let's go back to this, that you learned the body, because
Yes.
that's another big, big thing that people don't understand, that we are
Mm,
all different. There is no one
mhm.
size fits all. So you can't say, do this, and this, and you're going to lose the weight. It's not going to happen.
Absolutely, absolutely. And you know, I call the work I do data driven because it really is, it's a combination of things that really helps me guide people in addressing the root cause of whatever they're dealing with it, whether it's
Mhm.
weight loss resistance or digestive distress or hormones gone wackadoodle, whatever it is, right? But being able to understand, first of all, what information do I need for this person? Like, what labs do I need? And then being able to look at those labs through the lens of this individual and understand how it is all connected. And
Mhm.
then translate that to, okay, what's going to make a difference? You know, what do we need
Mhm.
to do here such that the body heals, such that we address the root cause of chronic constipation, diarrhea, bloating, or weight
Mhm.
loss challenges, or, you know, menopausal symptoms, whatever it is, right?
Mhm.
And, you know, when I get a notification that I have new lab results in, I'm like a kid at Christmas. I like cannot wait to open them up
Uh,
and see what we're going to discover about this person. You know,
mhm.
it's just really exciting work.
I tell my clients all the time, you've got to get your labs. I mean, I'm not a doctor, but you need to go get your labs. You need to
Yes.
go ask your doctor for your labs. With unfortunate part is, trying to find a doctor. And that's why I'm so glad to have you on today to kind of, show people that you don't have to go to your traditional doctor to get your labs. A lot of times I'll tell people to go to their doctor and get their labs, and they come back to me and they're like, my doctor said, like, I'll say, well, go get your hormone panel, your metabolic panel, or whatever from your doctor. And they're like, no, my doctor said there's no reason to run that. They know that I'm in menopause because I don't have a period and my
Right.
hormones are, I'm like, well, yeah, but you don't know where your hormones are. Like, you still
Mhm.
need those labs. You still,
Mhm.
and these doctors, I don't really understand why they don't run the labs, but they don't. And then even if they did run the labs, let's be honest, they don't have the time to spend with you to go over and come up with a plan to get to the root cause. Unfortunately, right now, a lot of doctors are throwing medicine at whatever it might be. You have
Right.
anxiety? Oh, here's an antidepressant. Oh, you have, you want to lose weight? Oh, we have a new drug out for that now. Oh,
Hmm.
and that's not getting to the root cause. We know. I mean, if you go off the medication, if it's not sustainable, which most of the time we don't want to have to take medication for the rest of our life if we don't have to. Some people have to. But
Sure.
what can we do to make it sustainable? So I'm wondering, what do you find when a menopausal or perimenopausal woman come to you and they've all of a sudden started gaining weight, they can't lose weight? What do you find? Is there a more common thing that is happening with them?
Yeah, there are a few different things I begin to think about in that situation. The woman who's perimenopausal or menopausal and is struggling to lose weight. And sometimes it's like for the first time in their life, right? I
Hmm.
was talking to a
Right.
woman yesterday who I'm working with, who she's like, whose body is this? Right? Like this has never been a
I've
problem for
heard
me.
this
And
too.
now it is, right?
Mhm.
But when the way of, okay, what is at the source of this? I think about a few different things. One is I start to get, well, yes, we want to make sure the thyroid is working well. But what's interesting is that it's so rarely the thyroid, but we have to make sure it's not the thyroid at the same
Mhm.
time.
Mhm.
Right. So doing a very comprehensive assessment of the thyroid is essential. So, what's commonly done when the thyroid is checked is a test called TSH, and that's an important puzzle piece. But in my opinion and experience, there are at least 4 other tests that should be done. So, really
Mhm.
doing a comprehensive assessment of the thyroid is important. And if someone does need thyroid support, we want to make sure they get that thyroid support. But even then, when it comes to weight loss, even around perimenopause and menopause, it's never just the thyroid. I've never seen anyone who was diagnosed as hypothyroid at any point in their life who began to support their thyroid appropriately, who suddenly like the weight was just handled. In other words,
Mhm.
yes, it must be addressed if there's a problem with the thyroid, but it's rarely the only thing that needs to happen. So there
Mhm.
are 3 things that I commonly look for in these situations outside of assessing the
Mhm.
thyroid. The
Mhm.
first one is looking at optimal insulin sensitivity. So what happens for a lot of people is that their fasting insulin levels are quote unquote normal, but they are far off of optimal. And when that happens, the body has like its foot on the metabolic brake, right? Metabolism is just slowed down.
Mhm.
And so I really like to see insulin 7, kind of like 2, 3 to 7. That's the range I like.
Mhm.
Whereas, oftentimes the lab normal range goes up to 19 or 20. So I've got a much tighter criteria that I'm looking at for, does this person have optimal insulin sensitivity? So that's the first thing, is looking at, is there compromised insulin sensitivity, or is it optimal? The
Wait,
second,
before you
yes,
say anything else there, I want to say this because I think that's a great thing so you're looking for optimal. You're not looking for
yes,
average. And I think
yes,
that's what, unfortunately, they have this average range like, oh, well, that's good. Well, no, we don't want to be average because let's face it, the average of America especially is not anywhere close to what we want to be. So I want to really
yes.
point that out to people. You don't want to be average.
Well said. Very well said, Deanna. Truly, truly, truly. Yes. And then, the second thing that I look at is inflammation.
Mhm.
So, inflammation, a lot of people have heard the term inflammation, and oftentimes I'll talk to people and they'll say, I'm really inflamed. And I'll say, tell me how it's showing up in their body. And they might say, my joints are achy, or my skin is, I get rashes, or, my digestion's, I get bloated all the
Mhm.
time, right?
Mhm.
They share how they experience inflammation in their body. And while that can be helpful, way more often than not, people don't have symptoms with elevated inflammation.
Mhm.
And so we want to make sure we get the number and we don't guess whether someone has symptoms or not. I'm going to be looking at inflammation. And there are different ways we can test inflammation. The two I most commonly look at in the way of labs, one is called HSCRP, which stands for, if you want the long name,
Yeah.
high sensitivity C-reactive protein, but HSCRP. And I like to see that under 1, so 1.0 or less.
Mhm.
And then the other one is something called homocysteine, which often isn't thought of as an inflammatory marker, but in my opinion, very much is. And I like to see that between 6 and 8. So those are two inflammatory markers. And if inflammation is elevated, similar to that insulin, if it's suboptimal, if it's higher than, that 7 range, the body is going to be shifting to energy conservation, aka fat storage mode, right? Elevated inflammation means conserve calories, right? And our body's, incredibly intelligent. That inflammatory response evolved to protect us and keep us safe from acute or, kind of short-term immediate injuries, right? Imagine hundreds of years ago, if you were foraging and you injured yourself, you broke a leg or something like that. Well, nobody's around, you're in the forest and you can't get more food. You better be able to conserve some calories until you're able to get your tootsies to some more food, right? So very intelligent, but it's that chronic inflammation that we're looking at with these numbers that's really the problem. So that second one is inflammation. And then the third common thing that I look at for people who are perimenopausal or menopausal and are struggling with weight is their detox pathways. Right. And the thing is that there are a lot of different ways we can assess detox pathways, and I'm going to look at it differently for different people. But when our detoxification, detox is such a chic word. I'm always like, if you put detox on a supplement, you're just going to sell a lot of it. So like everybody should use detox on their supplements, right?
Exactly.
But their actual physiological processes are detoxification pathways. And when they are not working well, toxins accumulate and hormones don't get metabolized properly and our microbiome functions differently. So it really sets the stage for damaging cells, for damaging our ability to produce energy, for increasing inflammation, for a lot of different things that interfere with our ability to lose weight. So again, those three things, we talked about the thyroid, which most people are familiar with, but the three things really are optimal. Does this person have optimal insulin sensitivity? Is inflammation elevated? Are their detox pathways, quote unquote, gunked up? Those are different things that I look at with people.
So on those tests, are those all blood lab tests or are they the dried urine test?
So the first two tests, insulin and inflammation, those are blood tests. The detox pathways tests, it depends. There are different things I do. So there will be some things I look at in blood because it helps, for example, B12 is a nutrient it's one of many nutrients required for healthy detoxification pathways to run. So if I'm doing when I'm doing someone's blood work, I will put a B12 in there. And if it's low, I already know they don't have enough fuel to run their detox pathways appropriately, right? So that will be a red light. I might actually do an assessment of the microbiome to see there's a marker on microbiome assessments that helps me understand if people are reabsorbing toxins. I might do an assessment, a salivary assessment or a urine assessment of sex hormones. I use different ones for different people. And then there are some things that actually more specifically test detox pathways. I tend to do those less because I find the other information is more actionable. And I always want actionable information, there's information that's interesting and there's information that's actionable, and we want information that's both interesting and actionable.
I love that. Yes. Okay. So let's talk about actionable. So tell everybody some things that maybe that you might see some results and then you're like, okay, well, you can do this, this, and this.
Yes. Yeah. So with insulin sensitivity, I will be looking for nutrient deficiencies that are either interfering with healthy insulin production or healthy insulin, like receiving the message, right? All of our hormones, insulin's a hormone, and all of our hormones work like a ball and a mitt, right? Think of the ball as the hormone and the mitt as the receptor. So we want to have appropriate amounts of the ball and we want a really good mitt. We want that mitt to just connect with that ball perfectly, right? So part of insulin sensitivity will be, especially on the receptor side, do we have a sticky mitt? And that will be, for example, looking at omega-3 fatty acids, that will be looking at vitamin D. I will also even consider inflammation in that conundrum because it will certainly interfere with a sticky mitt. So they do certainly all dance together. But if insulin isn't ideal, we're going to be looking at places we can support the person nutritionally, come up with some new solutions that are sustainable, right? You used that word earlier, Deanna, and I was like, oh my gosh, music to my ears. We speak the same language, right?
Yes, we do.
It's like, if it's not a sustainable solution, it's just not a solution, period.
Exactly.
So, when I work with people, I actually have them track nutrition and symptoms off of a shared Google document because that helps me get on your side and helps you troubleshoot, like, with your life, what's the next step? This is crossing the monkey bars and we don't get from A to Z overnight. That's no problem. We're looking for progress, not perfection. So how might we help insulin sensitivity? We might look for ways that we can come up with some what I call swap opportunities, right? Ways that we can satisfy your carbohydrate needs, that, true physiological needs, and also just, pleasure desires, right? In a way that still helps you produce the right amount, but not more insulin, right? So yes, reducing refined carbohydrates, but doing it in a way that works for you in your life. In the nutrient aspect, right? Certainly if omega-3s are low, we're really going to work on elevating those through nutrition, but probably also through supplementation. Another supplement that I know is having its day in the sun, and rightfully so, truly rightfully so, is berberine. Berberine, one of my patients the other day was telling me about, like, berberine TikTok videos are like galore. I'm not on TikTok, but I'm like, good to know. But with berberine, it's important that we use the right amount for the person in front of us, right? There are different doses. There are some people who I might use 500 milligrams 3 times a day, and really that person needs that amount. There are other people that I might use it once a day, some that I might use it twice a day, and numbers don't lie, right? I'm always going to circle back and check numbers again versus cross my fingers and hope that we're getting the outcomes.
Then you're just
right?
like shooting the dart and like hoping you hit
totally.
now I think that's a very good point you just made. Supplements. Okay. So people ask me all the time, what supplements do you take? And I'm like, well, I can tell you what supplements I take, but just because I take these supplements doesn't mean you should take these supplements, because
100%.
like, but let's go back to supplements. What are some, because there probably are some supplements that most menopausal women should take. What would you say that?
Well, I will say there are supplements that are commonly useful for people's bodies, but to your point, I test, don't guess. Right.
Yeah.
Don't guess. Right.
Right.
And to give you some examples of this, just even thinking about my husband and me, right? His vitamin D receptors, he has some genetic mutations that are very common to his vitamin D receptors. And so for him, he needs to take 5,000 IU of vitamin D a day to even have like barely optimal levels. And when I say barely optimal, I mean, I like to see vitamin D 45 to 60. So for him to be in that low end of optimal range, he needs to take 5,000 IU a day. For me, I need to take 5,000 IU a week, period. Like, that's all I need, right? And the only way we learn that is by doing our labs to figure out where we were, supplementing, and then circling back to see, our
Does
absorption.
your vitamin D dosage change in the summer versus the winter months?
A little bit, but I'm pretty good at wearing SPF or wearing the protective clothing that blocks the sun, at wearing, so a little bit, but not hugely. And I do encourage, I know there's some conversation about whether we should be wearing SPF or not. I am a believer in wearing SPF, right? I mean, skin cancer is real. And of course, there's the vanity aspect of keeping your skin as wrinkle-free as possible. So anyway, but sure, it can vary a little bit. There's certainly some people who, especially the person who they're taking 5,000 IU a day, sometimes I'll say, let's get a read on your vitamin D levels the third week of June, right? And see where you are. And sometimes we'll say, okay, for your body in the summer, only take it Monday through Friday, skip the weekends. And then once the shade hits, if you're living in a place that gets cold or not a lot of sunlight, then you want to bring it up back to the weekends. And so, there can be a little bit of variability for sure. Yeah. But,
sorry to get off on that tangent, but I think about that. And magnesium, what about magnesium?
I love magnesium for a lot of different things. I joke that magnesium is the gateway supplement because it does so many miraculous things and seemingly unrelated, right? So it can be a fabulous, very gentle adrenal support that helps people relax and go to sleep, right? It's not I know there's some conversation about whether melatonin is appropriate to use or not. I actually do believe it's appropriate to use when it's used appropriately. Haha, right? In other words, not everybody needs melatonin, and some people benefit from melatonin. But magnesium is, super gentle, a great way to help people get restful, relaxing, sustained sleep. It also is fabulous when someone is dealing with constipation. And there are forms for someone who's a champion pooper, right? Who doesn't need support in that way. There are different forms, like magnesium glycinate, for example, is one that doesn't have the same GI impact, right? And so for someone who has daily healthy bowel movements, they might want to reach for magnesium glycinate versus a magnesium citrate for someone who tends towards constipation. And then magnesium definitely can be helpful for, especially, kind of related to insulin, but optimizing fasting glucose. So when someone has an elevated fasting glucose, that means they're pre-diabetic. At a certain range, they'll be deemed diabetic. And in that person, there's great research on magnesium being one of the things that can be helpful at improving fasting glucose. So yes, lots
and
of
that's
great
so
things.
interesting because magnesium, there are so many kinds. Again, I mean, I get asked that question. Well, which magnesium? I'm like, I can tell you what I use. But you really, I think that's really why it's important, to find a doctor, to figure out your labs, to hear what you should be taking and not what your friend's taking, not what somebody on Instagram or TikTok's taking, but what is for you. Okay, let's go back to those, I get off tangents. I'm sorry, but
no, I think this is like the natural flow of the conversation. We're both,
so
like we said, straight lines are boring.
That's right. Exactly. Okay, so the actual items. So we talked about insulin and berberine and how that can help, and then even the magnesium maybe. So, and then just really eating, going to probably just maybe cutting out some of that processed foods. You're making yourself
really
miserable,
the sugar,
right?
the sugar and simple carbs, and then alcohol in excess, and especially those sugary drinks, right? But Rome wasn't built in a day, right? We doesn't happen overnight. So I'm such a huge, when I collaborate with people, it really is, okay, let's get clear on your next step. We're not going, again, we're ditching the all or nothing broken approach. What's the next thing we're going to take on? And we'll create that together. We'll talk about, I have something that I call our Q2 yes and our Q2 less. So Q2 yes, the Q2 stands for quality and quantity. So the yes list, these are things like our non-starchy vegetables and our omega-3 rich fish and our, anti-inflammatory spices and, all our mono and polyunsaturated fats like nuts and seeds and avocado and olive oil, all those wonderful things, right? So these are things that we know help our body thrive, simply put, right? Our Q2 yes checklist, these are things that support our body's ability to express vitality and health, right? And then our Q2 less checklist, these are foods that when we consume them in excess, create stress and show up in different ways in different bodies. For some, based on people's genetic Achilles heels, some people will show up as heart health, others it might show up as diabetes, others it might show up as weight gain or hormones gone wackadoodle or digestive distress, right? Different things show up for different people. But this Q2 less checklist, these are things we know that when we consume them in excess, they do create stress on the body and that will show up in different ways. And so, really when I work with people, we talk about, okay, what's on this yes, this Q2 yes, that's going to elevate our health list, and our Q2 less that's going to create stress and detract from our health. And then we talk about, okay, Deanna, where would you like to start in this next week? What are 2 promises you'd like to make to yourself? And, you might come back and you say, I can see I used to eat vegetables more regularly, and I just, these last years have been hectic, and I'm committed to prioritizing that. So how about I start with, and you'll say whatever there is for you to say. Like, if for me, I really encourage people a half a plate of colorful vegetables twice daily. So, the place someone might start is, listen, I'm going to start with a quarter plate once a day because right now I'm not getting any, and a quarter plate's going to be better, and half a plate twice a day sounds like overwhelming. No problem. Let's start with a quarter plate once a day. That's awesome, right?
See, and I love that too, because I am a big believer that we know what we should do. And we start ticking off all of these things that we should do. And then, just like you said, it becomes overwhelming. And then we may do it for a little bit, but it goes back to this, it's not sustainable. And I say this to my clients all the time. It's the small things that we do consistently over time that add up, to a bigger transformation. It's not some big thing that we decide we're going to do, because we can't sustain that for long term because things come up. And innately, we know that 1 or 2 things that we should do, but we just don't want to admit it, or we just don't do it because maybe we're not ready to do it too, And so taking those small steps and holding them accountable, like, okay, you decide. It's not, I'm not deciding, you decide. Here are some things that you can do and that could make a difference. And then hopefully if they've reached it to you already, it's kind of like what I say when people come to me. When they come to me, they're ready to make a change. They're ready to feel better. And we always do that better when we have accountability,
Absolutely. Accountability and structure, right?
Structure,
people,
yes.
right? Structure, data, right? How is someone going to know that they have elevated inflammation, or that they're not metabolizing their estrogens in the optimal way unless they have the information? But not just, get the numbers, but really understand how it's showing up in their body. And I'm such a believer that we don't buy what we do, we buy why we do it, right? And so, another part of my work is not just giving people information, but guiding them and getting connected to their why, right? So
I do that same thing in my program. I love that. I love it. I love it.
Yeah. Love it. Totally love it. And if you think about, as a mom, Deanna, I can't imagine how many nights you woke up in the middle of the night to care for a child, right? And like the things you had to do at those moments, we won't talk about, right? When they needed your help, right? Yeah. But, you didn't think about it because your why was so clear. I mean, devoted love, period. Like, why devoted love? Like, just thoughtless, right? But when people are dealing with their health and themselves, there is a why for them to uncover. They've just not really uncovered it yet. And so the what itself might not be naturally compelling. In other words, wine is delicious, why not drink a bottle? And cookies are too, so you should have some of that, right? But really, why not lies in what's at stake. Like, really, what's the 5-year future look like in the downward spiral future? That
Yeah.
might be pretty sucky to consider, right?
Well,
but then on the flip side, what's the spiral up future look like? Like, what's the carrot dangling? What becomes available for you through triumphing in this area of your life?
And I think that's really important, and really digging deep into figuring out that why, because it can't be, well, I want to fit in these jeans, or I've got an upcoming wedding, or, I mean, like, there's got to be more to it, because once you reach that place, then a lot of times seen it. I know you've seen it. People reach that destination, and then they backtrack, they go back to,
Absolutely.
and it goes back to that all or nothing mentality. And yeah, so I think that's a really in balance wellness method. I ask them, like, why do you want to do this? And they write it down. I'm like, but why do you want to do that? And then they write it down. We just keep asking why until we get to that real powerful why, because you and I both know things come up. And it's not like we have to be perfect. I hate, if I have to be perfect at anything, I'm like, no, this is not going to work for me, because I'm not perfect. A big thing I have done over the last few years is really, well, I cut out alcohol altogether for a while. I did drink a little bit when I was in Italy and France, because the wine is so much cleaner there. And I did not have, but I only still had one glass. I mean, to me, it's more about, I want to make sure I'm sleeping. I want to make sure I feel good the next day. So alcohol does not serve me. And as I've gotten older, it just really doesn't serve me. So my why I don't drink the alcohol, even if I think, oh, it might taste good, or, oh, maybe I just want a little, an edge off. I'm like, but how do I want to feel? I want to sleep good, and sleep is my big priority. So I'm not going to do it. It makes it easier to make those decisions.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, no, that's so well said. And, the point to your, like what you said, right, that there's no such thing as perfection, right? There is some physiological sway our body has. So having a glass of wine here and there can absolutely align with someone's intention for their health and their life. It's really just getting very clear. I have one woman who, she keeps count. She is now, oh gosh, where is she now? She's at over 500 days without alcohol. But for her, she really saw for herself, like, what served her was no alcohol. But I have many, many other people who've seen similar to what you're sharing, right? And what I experienced also is less alcohol, right? Like a glass here and there totally works. That's fine, right? But how it used to be, that doesn't work for my body and my health and what I'm committed to, right?
Yeah. And I love that. And again, everybody has to make that decision for themselves. You can't, you can't tell somebody, well, you need to. I mean, I've learned that. I had a client that she was drinking alcohol almost every night, not because it was a social thing for her, but she wanted to lose weight. And I'm like, I'm just going to tell you, you're not going to be able to lose weight if you do that. And so then she came back to me later. So she dropped out of my program, didn't, it's like, I can't help you lose weight if you don't,
You might not like the answer, but here's what it is.
I'm like, this is the way it is. So anyway, she came back a few months later, and I said, look, it's the same way. It's still the same thing. She said, Deanna, I really cut back on my alcohol. And so she had joined a program. It was a 21-day reset, and it really changed everything for her. So then she was able to partake in my program, and And she didn't give it up totally, but she found different alternatives that
Mhm.
didn't make her feel, oh, well, there's a lot of peer pressure when it comes to alcohol. Let's face it, a lot of peer
Mhm.
pressure.
I always say if you can just get past that first drink, nobody's going to notice.
It's so
Right?
true. It's
It's like,
so true. So
you know,
true.
what can
Yeah.
you say? Hold on, I'm still thinking about what I want, or
Yeah.
I'm really thirsty. I need a glass of water first,
Yeah.
or, like whatever it is that helps you and
Mhm.
kind of crowd out the noise of what other people think for
Mhm.
that.
I know. I know. Oh my gosh. I mean, we could talk forever and ever. So let's give everybody just a couple more actionable things that they could do that, or that they may need to do. Again, you don't know what you really need to do until you go see Dr. H. But let's just give them a couple of extra actionable items.
Well, so I would say you and I are both on the same page of, I will actually start with perspective, because to me, really is the foundation that opens up the world
Mhm.
of change. And so the first action item my encouragement is to get clear on your why.
Mhm.
And what I'll invite your listeners to do is actually time travel to the 5-year future and take pen to paper or fingers to keyboard, whatever you like, and write the story of your 5-year future with your health as you intend it occur. Right? In other
I
words,
love
5 years
that.
from now, I'll be 51. So I'd say I'm 51 and my body is strong and resilient and beautiful and healthy, or, whatever I'd say. And I talk about what that experience is like and what it makes available for me in my life, right? How it allows me to connect with others, contribute to others, be with others, experience
Cool.
joy, all those different things, right? So
Love
that is my first invitation to your listeners, is to do that 5-year time traveling to this future you intend. The next thing that I would encourage your listeners to do is to actually begin cultivating a habit of being kind and honest.
Oh, I love
And
that.
yeah. I think for most of us, that's not a natural thing we're born with. We're more often, especially in this area, kindness expressed as I'm not looking, right? I'm not going to look at the scale, or I'm not going to really be present to what I'm putting in my body or how my body's reacting, right? So that's kindness, because the other option has been look and beat ourselves up, right? So my encouragement is to begin practicing being kind and honest. So how could you do that? Well, you could actually begin tracking just for yourself how you're fueling your body, how you're moving your body, how you're sleeping, how your body's reacting, starting to notice, right? So that would be something that would be really useful. I promise, I've actually had to do this in a number of graduate courses, and oh my gosh, Deanna, every time it's been assigned, I've been like an insolent child. I've been like, oh, this is ridiculous. I can't believe you're making me do it. And every time I do it, I'm like, oh my God, wow, look at what I just learned. I mean, it's just true.
Oh, I agree, because when it's down there, you see.
Yes,
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 totally. So it's just nothing wrong. We're just humans doing our best. So that would be a practice I'd encourage people to take on. In the way of a few other action items, the third one I'd actually invite everyone to take on is playing your best game now. So what I mean by that is actually leaning into your wisdom and asking yourself, what is the best game I could play right now? Right now. And for some people in the moment, like if we think about movement, I was talking to a woman the other day who she had intended on exercising for 60 minutes, right? She loved to do Peloton. She was going to do a Peloton exercise, spin class, and life happened. Her job happened. Her kids needed her, yada, yada, yada. She had 30 minutes left, that she could use to exercise. And she said the old me would have said, well, I didn't get it in. It's just how it is. But the new her actually got on the bike and rode for 30 minutes, right? She took something, right? Her best game was the 30 minutes she had, and she used that, right? So that's one example. Another example might be, okay, I'm going out for a big celebration. I could have 3 drinks instead of 5. Okay, if that's the best game you can play right now, I'm going to cheer all day long for that. Like, really, if
Right.
that's, you know, so
Yeah.
looking for opportunities to give up that broken all or nothing paradigm and step into a new habit called playing my best game right now.
Oh, I love that. Oh, those are so great and so actionable. So thank you. Thank you so much for that. I love that. I'm going to think about that. How can I play my best game? I love that. I've never heard it said like that. So, oh, I love it. Okay, Dr. H, how can people find you and get in touch with you and get started with you?
Well, you can find me on my website at wellempowered.com, and you can schedule a free consultation through the website, a complimentary 30-minute virtual consultation, unless you will be in Lucerne, in which case we can do it in person. But yes, you can find me there, and please be sure you tell me where you found me, because you will get 10% off a la Deanna
Oh, well,
for
thank you.
yeah, totally my pleasure. But that 30-minute conversation is designed for me to learn more about you, for us to discuss what it would look like to work together and answer any questions you have so that you can figure out what your next best step is. And then on Instagram, I'm at Well Empowered, and on Facebook, I'm at you Well Empowered. So it would be a pleasure to connect there as well.
I love that. And all of that will be in the show notes. So be sure and look at those if you're like, I'm in the car right now driving. Can't write this down. So, well, Dr. H, thank you so much for taking the time to meet with me. I'm guessing, what time is it there? It's late there in
It
Switzerland too.
is 6:30
Oh,
p.m.
okay.
Yeah, not so bad.
Okay. It's not so bad. I know I was on a whole different time zone when I was there, so I kind of understand a little bit. But thank you so much for taking the time. And I love all that you're doing and just the knowledge. And I really think, I wish there were more and more people like you, but I love that you are doing it through telehealth, which is, I think, y'all, it makes life so much easier, especially after COVID. More and more doctors have gone to telehealth, and it really is simple. You can do it in the privacy of your own home. I'm guessing you send tell them what labs they need, and then they go to a lab close to their house. Is that
Yeah, exactly. We get people set up with appointments near them to complete their labs. Some of the kits we complete are in-home kits, so it just depends on what labs we're ordering, but usually it's a combination of the two.
Yeah. Well, again, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you so much, Deanna. It's been such a pleasure to be with you and to share our love of health and vitality with your listeners here.
Well, thank you.